Hey guys, this is Gamer Guy. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time we're doing the double header because there's a mini set and the next core set doesn't really do a ton for the format, and all of the tournaments are within the core sets thing here. So there's no tournament data for Shining Legends, and one of the things that we're kind of in the middle of an era right now where there's several sets, at least two sets now, since we're doing these together. There's like two sets where we don't have any data on our usual compilation site to look at for deck lists or ideas and stuff like that. So we're gonna go with the one that's got all the tournament data for it, and that is the Crimson Invasion set. So this is the first core set released after Worlds. It was released, I believe, November time in the TCG. It was like August was Burning Shadows, and then this was the November set. So it had a bit to live up to, and it really didn't do that. There's only 135 total cards in here, including all the energies and the alt rarities and stuff, and there aren't too many ridiculous cards. Most of the decks that were built from Shining Legends stuff didn't even need to use Crimson Invasion cards in order to be played, so that should say a fair bit. What it did introduce though was the Ultra Beasts, although not very many of them within the set itself, which is kind of weird. Ultra Beast is just a tag here. I mean, if you've played Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you'll know roughly what the deal with these guys are. They're pretty much all, with one exception, they're all basic Pokemon, and it's just a tag this time. Think of it like the Delta species or the SP Pokemon that we've had tags for before, or in the modern format, Fusion Strike, Rapid Strike, that sort of thing. It's just something that you can refer to on card design in order to either specifically interact with that group of Pokemon. I like this sort of design. It's a little bit reminiscent of archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can print search your deck for an X card, like a Dark Magician card or something like that, right? And it's just neat. And delineation here actually does kind of mean something, because all of the Ultra Beast cards work on prize cards within some way. So we'll just look at the GX attacks, all the GX attacks for these guys, but we'll get more examples later on when we don't get GX variants of these. Symbiont GX adds the top two cards of the opponent's deck to their prizes. So there's some way of either manipulating prizes or taking advantage of a particular prize card state. Buzzwole GX, for example, does more damage for each of your remaining prize cards. So yeah, that's pretty much the gimmick for the Ultra Beast. And as far as gimmicks go, kind of a cool one. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. There's like 90 some, I think it's 90 cards in Shining Legends, including all the stuff down the bottom, and yeah, like I said, 135 here, not a ton. When you combine the two sets, take out the energy excess and stuff, there's probably about the same as what Burning Shadows or Guardians Rising had, so I guess it kind of makes sense to lump them in here a bit as well. The other thing that we have are some promos, and some of the Ultra Beasts specifically came out in promo form here. So Pheromosa, Xurkitree, and Celesteela. These will all get full arts in the next core set, which, a little bit weird to be honest, but it's not the first time this has happened for chase cards and stuff in the game. And yeah, they were available as promos. The second place, which one was it? I think it was the Oceania International. No, it was the European International. I mean, European came first this year, then Oceania, then in Latin America. So the European Internationals actually had second place Celesteela here. And that's what kind of got me saying, oh, I need to go back and look at all the promo stuff. So let's look at the promos we have available. At least look at the ones that are worth showing. There's 3 here. The Zoroark, as nice as it actually looks, doesn't do anything particularly good. Silvally, which is part of Crimson Invasion stuff, really doesn't do anything good whatsoever, but that's okay because the GX is going to make up for it. And Tapu Fini, if your water Pokemon was healed during this turn, you can do 120 damage. There is actually a Manaphy that we'll talk about that can heal your Pokemon with water energy on them, but it's a lot of energy for not that much damage, to be honest. We'll be able to do relatively similar amounts of damage for less coming up here. So yeah, not really too efficient, unfortunately. Mewtwo, I remember seeing a tiny bit of experimentation with Malamar when that came out in the set following what we're doing here. Actually, no, Malamar is 2 sets from now, I think. It's in Forbidden Light. So I remember this getting some play at some point. It's mostly because it's anti-spread. If it's in the active spot, all of the opponent's active Pokemon's attacks do 20 less damage. This is not just to Mewtwo, this is to everything you have. So that's pretty much it. And also, Super Cybolt, as expensive as it is, it does get a one-shot on Buzzwole-GX, which does have a sniping hit that we'll talk about later on. So in Malamar, when you can get Psychic Energy back from the discard, this would be like okay. I could maybe see it as a Metagross card if you want to play a heavier amount of Psychic Energy. Maybe you're playing the Necrozma-GX as a main attacker, and then you want a single prize hitter or something. This could be a one-off in there. So, I don't know, maybe it's like something you could play just now. Probably not going to see it. Lugia, Shining Lugia specifically, this is a different name from Lugia, so you could still play like 4 Lugia Break, and 4 Shining Lugia if you really wanted to. Argent Wing is the main thing that you want to go for here for free energy. This 130 HP basic, still pretty good that way. 120 damage if the opponent has an ability, which is going to be very common going into the format that we're in now, so that's not too bad. Obviously hits Tapu Lele for 120 as well. Not quite enough to one-shot anything, but as a single prizer with a lot of HP and not really many tags that the opponent can hit, it's probably going to survive. It's not too bad. Aeroforce does a flat 130 for 4 energy, discard 1 from this Pokemon. It's fine. If you're accelerating a bunch anyway, you're probably going to be able to get to that and then finish off some stuff that you've hit with the first attack. It's alright. Ho-Oh, on the other hand, not particularly good, unfortunately. Same HP, same like weakness resistance, etc. Retreat cost is there. You could Kiawe to this and make it reasonable. You could Kiawe to Shining Lugia as well if you really wanted, though. And Fire Blast is just not very impressive. 110 damage for a Fire and Triple Colorless is not very good, especially when you have to discard an energy from it. When you consider that Lugia is technically cheaper because it can use any energy for the 4th one, and does plus 20 damage. I have no idea why they made Ho-Oh that much weaker, but its ability is what technically tries to save it. It's like an inbuilt Wishful Baton. If it's active and gets KO'd by damage, then you move up to 2 basic energy from it to your bench. So the idea is you're supposed to be able to keep the energy and play with it. Not particularly good, unfortunately, but hey, it is there, I suppose. Shining Celebi is our new way to use pre-evolution attacks. I actually didn't realize this was coming so quickly. We just lost the one way that we would do it in Shrine of Memories, so now we have this that can do it instead. Its attack is obviously terrible, but if you need to use pre-evolution attacks for whatever reason, sometimes evolving basics and stuff have really good attacks, this is your way to do it. Pheromosa-GX is a 170 HP Pokemon with only 1 retreat, which is pretty good. All of its attacks are very low maintenance, which is nice. Fast Raid doing 30 for 1 grass, and you can use it on your first turn going first. There's not a lot of donk potential with it because 30 damage is not enough, and we did lose Forest of Giant Plants, so we can't go turn 1 Decidueyes in order to make this better. You can still do like 60 to an opposing GX on the first turn, though, if they leap with 1, so that's kind of cool. Cruel Spike for 2 grass does just 60, and the opponent's active is confused. Not particularly strong. Confusion is annoying at the very least, but most decks are going to be playing 3 or 4 Guzma at this point, so we're probably not going to see that come into play. But realistically, Beauty GX is like the best part of this card. For 2 grass energy, this does 50 for each prize card the opponent has taken. This is really good for closing out games. The problem is the energy cost is really awkward. Like, 2 grass is difficult to fit into a lot of decks. Because, you know, unless you're a dedicated grass deck, you're probably not going to be able to fulfill that. So this card's most likely not going to see play, but it's at least cool, and there's some good stuff it can do. So, you know, possible. Circuitry is one of the many wall-based cards that come out in this set. There is, as the format progressed, there was a growing contingent of wall decks that came in, which is not my preference, obviously, but this was one of the things that came up as part of it. It is kind of like Aegislash-EX was. It prevents all damage done to it by attacks from opponents' Pokemon that have special energy attached to them. So yeah, it can just shut out a lot of decks that are relying solely on like double colorless, maybe rainbow energy is in there, and that's pretty much all it does. Doesn't often get to use its actual attack in most decks at the moment, but Rumbling Wires for 2 lightning and a colorless does 100 damage and discards the top card of the opponent's deck. Sometimes that matters. And then for 1 lightning energy, this one actually does come up in the stall decks. Lighting-GX, I always thought this was Lightning-GX, because, you know, of course, but it's not, it's Lighting-GX. The opponent reveals the hand, add a card you find there to their prizes face down. It doesn't shuffle the prizes, it just puts it onto their board, so they know where it is if they want that card back out, but they've got to be able to take a prize again. Sometimes that just isn't going to happen. Finally, we have Celesteela, which was pretty good when it first came out. It's a whopping 200 HP on a basic, which is the highest that we've had so far outside of like Wailord, but this one's supposed to attack, so kind of makes sense. For one, this is actually Lightning Weak as well. It's a metal type, but it's got the flying type properties to it. So Lightning Weak, but fighting resistant. Massive 4 energy retreat cost, but in the deck that it was played in, that doesn't matter. We'll get to that much later on. For 1 metal and 2 colorless, Rocket Fall does only 30 damage, but it does 30 more for each colorless in the opponent's active retreat cost. So on average, that's going to do like 90, which is not particularly impressive to be honest. But again, this is a very high HP basic, so its attack maybe being less amazing is not the worst thing in the world. Moonpress for 1 more energy than that, metal triple colorless just does 130. That's fine, like it's okay damage. Again, expensive, but you're very tanky basic Pokemon, so this is as much HP as some stage 1s have. So yeah, not the worst sort of you know, damage ratio there, because you're likely to survive a lot of hits with this amount of HP. And then Blaster-GX for that same metal and triple colors does 180, and then turns all of your prizes face up. There's the prize gimmick for this one. It's Town Map, but with a 180 damage attack alongside it. 180 is not the best, but it is enough to KO a decent number of Pokemon, and with a Choice Band it does 210, so that KOs basically all the Stage 1 GXs as well. So it's not the worst. And again, expensive, but the deck that it plays in does have some energy acceleration it can work with, so it's okay. There's a Marshadow here as well, but this isn't a particularly good one, and we are going to see a much better Marshadow as we talk about Shining Legends, which we will do just now. I would be remiss if I didn't start in the dark section for this one though, at least to get the best card in the set out of the way, and a card you are going to see a lot of for a very, very long time to come. This is, I believe, Todd's favourite card of all time, if I remember discussions that I've heard properly. Zoroark-GX. It has 210 HP, 2 energy retreat, it's in the same line as the stand-in Zoroark, so you've already got a very good ability to work with there. But this one's got trade, and you will know this as refinement if you play the modern game, because it's on Curlier. Once during your turn, discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. So it's consistency on a pretty bulky Pokemon, unlike Octillery, and it also has a pretty good attack too. For a double colorless energy, Riotous Beating does 20 for each of your Pokemon in play. So it caps out at 120, we did just lose Skyfield, but it expanded, this thing become absolutely insane, partly because of Execute, that you could just keep refining or trading with the same Execute, just keep building your hand up, but also because Skyfield let it do 160, which was just silly, and that's insane. The double dark energy cost for the GX attack here kind of makes it like not really played very much, but Trickster GX, if you do get to it, just copies any one of the opponent's attacks in play and uses it as its attack. You can copy a GX attack, you are flipping the marker down anyway, so you just get to use whatever you want from the opponent's side, doesn't matter what the cost is. But 2 dark is not normally the way this plays. It typically plays in any deck that doesn't use Darkness Energy pretty much, and you play with double colorless to do Riotous Speeding. So it's not likely that you're going to see Trickster basically ever, but if you do play Darkness Energy, keep an eye on it. Right, let's go over the rest of the set in order, because honestly, this is the most important card, but there's plenty of other cool things in this set. We would have had enough cards to like build a decent amount of decks out of this one and have some fun with it, so see what we can do. Venusaur is a massive 160 HP dude with a lot of retreat cost. The Ivysaur also has a gigantic retreat cost for like no reason whatsoever. Really don't know why they've just made Ivysaur massively, you know, fat to retreat at this point. But hey, the main thing for this one, because the attack is nothing significant either, each basic energy attached to your Pokemon provides 2 grass energy. Can't apply more than one of these at a time. The nice thing about this, compared to the previous version of this, which was Wild Growth, I believe that one was all the way back in Gen 4 with Sceptile, this now works on any Pokemon. There was a Gardevoir in Gen 5 as well that did this for Psychics, but I believe it was only for Psychic Pokemon. So now, technically speaking, you could, say, attack with a Zoroark for 1 grass energy, which is pretty good. The thing it's supposed to pair with is the Shining Genesect over here. This thing does 50 plus 20 for each of the grass energy attached to it for 3 colorless energy, so you basically get to stack more energy than what would be reasonable to attach to this thing. Get 130 for 2 energy attaches, which is fine enough. And it uses energy reload in order to shuffle those things around. Once during the turn, you may move a grass energy from one of your other Pokemon to this Pokemon. Basically the same as the Flash Fire that was on the Flareon EX I used quite a while ago. It's fine. Single prize at 130 HP, so it's pretty good that way. Just maybe a bit awkward to set up, but it did have 1 top during this format, so I do have the deck built. So I don't know, maybe we'll see it. The other thing I wanted to note from Grass is the Shaman, partly because Flippity Flap is an amazing attack name and I just love that, but also because Rally Back is actually pretty good with a card from Crimson Invasion. For 1 Grass and 1 Colorless it does 30, but it does 120 if any of your Pokemon were KO'd during the opponent's last turn. By damage, specifically, unfortunately, so it does not work if the opponent puts damage counters down, but you know, still pretty good. And that attack cost might look a bit too expensive, but there's counter energy in this set that we'll get to at the end of this, so it's possible to pay that with a single energy, and it ends up being pretty cool. For the fire types, there's not really a lot to note in this set. Entei GX is unfortunately really bad, and we have some fantastic fire stuff with Turtonator and Ho-Oh right now. There is literally 0 reason to play this thing. It does snipe 150 with its GX attack, which is pretty cool, but that implies that you have built up its GX attack, and the rest of the card is so bad that I just don't see any reason to use it. You want to save your GX attack for Nitro Tank in fire decks, to be honest, so I don't think it's particularly good. There's Reshiram in here that's kind of neat. Reshiram and Zekrom have just about switched places from what they were before. They're still 130 HP, they've still got Outrage as their first attack, 20 plus 10 for a DCE per damage counter that you have on this thing. They now have a 3 energy retreat cost each instead of a 2, but that makes them Heavy Ball searchable, so that's arguably an improvement. And both of their second attacks do 130 damage and have 1 stipulation. This one can't attack during your next turn, which is not quite the same as taking recoil that Zekrom did, but Zekrom discards 2 energy from itself, which is literally like almost a carbon copy of what the original Reshiram did. So yeah, they're fine to single prize attackers. At this point, it's funny that we've come like sort of full circle on this, where initially they were broken beyond belief, but now they're just like fine. But 130 doesn't quite go the same distance it used to, right? Even with a Choice Band, this is still not enough to KO a Lele, so they're not actually knocking stuff out in one hit. But what they are doing is taking a reasonable beating whilst only giving up a single prize. And there will be times where that actually matters, so kinda cool. The other thing I want to note in the fire type department is Incineroar, not because it's good, it's really not, but because Profane Punch it was originally in Japanese, it is Goddamn Punch, and there was absolutely no way that was getting transferred over to the TCG in, you know, the West. So that's just a fun little bit of trivia. Also, I know this is just in Zoroark in general, but I can't get away from where he uses flamethrower. I'm sorry. It's just stupid. On the water department, there's a couple of things that are kind of cool here. Manaphy, I didn't actually think this was any good, to be honest, but apparently it's alright. Once during your turn before you attack me, heal 20 from one of your Pokemon that has a water energy on it. I guess that's fine enough. Sometimes that takes you out of range of the opponent's like 2-shot, so that's cool, I guess. It does stack if you put multiple of these down, but then your board state I think is going to be pretty clogged, so I don't really know how viable that is, but it's cool enough. There's a Keldeo that I kind of like here for 2 water energy, 110 HP on this guy, 20 plus 20 for each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. Again, with a counter energy that we'll talk about later, you could do this with 1 attach. And that's probably good. It's like the inverse of Riotous Beating, I suppose, and most decks do max out their bench, so I could see it. Again, if you're having trouble with a fire deck, maybe this is the way to beat it. And then way into the future, we are going to see Shining Volcanion as a potential card for Naganadel Quagsire decks. They are like 2019 decks, I'm pretty sure. The cards don't come out until then. But Shining Volcanion for 130 HP, free energy retreat, kind of okay. Lightning weakness instead of grass weakness. Most water types, like Keldeo over here, are weak to grass in this generation, so that is something worth noting. Its attack of note is Dual Pump. For free water energy, 50 damage to 2 of the opponent's Pokemon. Not the best, but it's on a basic Pokemon, and later on, that energy cost, although prohibitive at the moment, isn't really going to matter too much, because Quagsire Naganadel does have a habit of streaming a bunch of energy from the bench to the active to make this work, so it'll be okay. There's a Raichu-GX, which is the start of something that could be cool. This is very similar to the Primarina, but as a stage 1, 210 HP, only 1 retreat, pretty cool. Powerful Spark does 20 for each lightning energy attached to your Pokemon, plus a base of 20 damage as well. Takes 2 colors to use, probably going to be 2 lightning obviously, but it's just not quite there for me, to be honest. I don't really think you're going to get that many energy down. You need to probably get 12 in most situations, 11 maybe, because 11 plus Choice Band gets to 250. So that's your sort of target. And the fighting weakness is really bad to have, to be honest, because everyone's going to be targeting Zoroark's fighting weakness, so sharing that is not great. Fonda for 2 lightning and the colors does 160, and then Alter does 30 to itself, which is a bit blah, but 160 at least with a choice band is good numbers, so there's that. And then Voltail-GX, we've seen this with Ice Beam-GX actually before. 2 lightning and the colors again, 120 damage this time, and the opponent's active is automatically paralyzed. Again, not really going to matter too much under most circumstances, because people are going to play a ton of Guzma, or Acerola could just get it out of the active as well, so maybe not the best GX attack, but it's there at least. There is also a Raikou that's kind of cool for lightning in here though, 120 HP, 2 retreat, so a little bit on the low and like high end of stuff that way, but it's another one of these Pokemon. We're going to see another one with Registeel actually in Crimson Invasion, where it's a 30 damage for 1 energy attack that attaches an energy from your discard pile to one of your bench. In this case it's a lightning energy. Electric Ball just does 90 for 2 lightning in the colors, not amazing, but with a choice band you can probably KO lightning weak GXs with it, so that's cool I suppose, but it's mostly just energy acceleration, and a single Prizer that's doing that as well. So also stunning artwork, Mitsuhiro Arita once again doing God's work over here, so yeah, really like that one. For the Psychic types, there's a few that are worth noting all in a row here. The Mewtwo GX does not really come into play until Malamar comes out, but it did see some play at that point, so it's kind of neat. 190 HP, 2 retreat, Full Burst does 30 for each energy that's on this Pokemon for starting cost of 1 Psychic. Not really great scaling, but when you can get multiple energy in play at a time, it's not too bad. Super Absorption is its second attack that just does 60 for a Psychic and Colorless, and heals 30 from the Pokemon, so it can do a little bit of tanking stuff. I guess that's cool. And then the main thing it's got going for it is Psystrike-GX, which does 200 damage for a triple psychic and isn't affected by any effects on the opponent's active, so you can punch through safeguard Pokemon, which is actually relevant in the dark section that we'll get to. So doesn't really see play at the moment, but could see play later when you can accelerate Psychic Energy basically. Shining Mew is the meme to end all memes here. Legendary Guidance lets you search through your deck for up to 2 energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like for 1 Psychic Energy. Broken, right? Guess it could also beam someone if they're the same energy cost if you want to do 10 damage, but you know, why would you want to do that, right? Zero Retreat too. The catch? It's only 30 HP on this thing. It gets sniped out by everything, and the problem is 30 snipe damage is actually something that happens quite a bit now too, partly because of this guy. Latios doesn't look like much, but actually ends up being pretty good because spread damage is nice. 110 HP, 1 retreat, kinda cool. 1 retreat might matter later when Floatstone rotates because there's retreat aids that only reduce by 1, so might work. And for double colorless energy, 30 damage plus 30 to one of the opponent's bench. Oh no, that Shiny Mew on the bench just kind of died now. Whoops! Lagoon Flight doesn't do too much, but if you are playing Psychic Energy in a Choice Band, you can KO like a Buzzwole or another Psychic Weak GX that's got 200 HP, because it does 70 base, so I guess that's kind of alright. Shining Jirachi is the next version of Espeon EX. Espeon tends to see more play because it devolves everything the opponent has, but this 70 HP single prizer does take a Psychic Energy this time, but it does 10 damage and fully devolves the opponent's active Pokemon. So if they're a stage 2 and they've gone through their full two turns of evolving line rather than rare candying, you're going to put both stages of that card back into their hand, really setting them back in that aspect. So yeah, kind of neat. Bit of a anti-Greninja, I suppose. If they're a Greninja break, they're just going to go all the way back down to Froakie. That's hilarious. Or Frogadier, I guess, if that's where they've gone to. But still, does a tiny bit of damage as well, so there's the possibility that you can KO stuff with this as well. Choice Band does make it 40 on the GX and then puts it all the way down to its basic stage that probably only has 60 HP. So yeah, it's alright. And then we get to this, but Marshadow is not a fun card. If you remember Generation 4, there was a Giratina that had this trait to it, but that didn't see much play because the free energy retreat cost on it was just too much to bear if you led with it. It saw playing like Regigigas and that was it. This guy's only a 1 energy retreat, so it's much easier to remove from the active spot. And I'm talking about it in this way because Let Loose is the same thing as what the Giratina had. When you bench this from your hand, you may have each player shuffle draw 4. It's a judge on a Pokemon that can potentially be Ultra Balled out of the deck. Gross. This actually got banned and expanded because putting the opponent down to 4 cards before they get to play their first turn was deemed to be not fun. And they are correct. A lot of games in this era moving forward get decided by this thing. It doesn't see a lot of tournament play at the beginning. I'm probably going to have to add this into a few decks that I would like to see it in. But when it catches on, oh boy. Especially in decks that can play Mysterious Treasure later on, because then they have another way of searching this dead easy. Super annoying. Finding only gets Stunfisk, and Stunfisk doesn't do anything, so nobody really cares. Spiritomb is in this set. It has the ability to stop the opponent's active retreating. That's pretty much the best it can do. If Curse Drop was for a single Dark, I'd probably be okay with it. We actually do see that on the Bench Barrier Mew later, not in Curse Drop, but Psi Power, same attack. So yeah, could have done with that, but it didn't have it, so whatever. And then the other 2 legendaries at the end of this are also really good. Yveltal has only 120 HP this time, but it still has Oblivion Wing, so it can still accelerate energy. This time it's a lot more expensive to do though, but it does accelerate as well as doing 90 damage. It's quite good. Dark and Double Colorless for 90 and accelerate a Dark to one of your bench from the discard pile. Strong. Also, that Double Colorless can come in handy for Strafe, which lets it do 30 damage and switch to the bench if you choose to. So, versatile. and most of the decks that you'll play it in use double colorless anyway, and you can play it as a fighting resistant single prizer, say for Zoroark if you want to play the dark version, and we still have Yveltal Break, which can work with this quite well as well. So even though it takes 3 dark instead of the double colorless on it, it gives it 150 HP, and that can matter quite a lot, so pretty good card. Then we have Hooper, which is essentially Alolan Ninetales on a basic with 10 extra HP. Yeah, it does have a higher retreat cost, I think, but still. Scoundrel Guard prevents all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon by GX and EX. It's Safeguard, basically, for basic Pokemon. It does only 80 damage for a Dark and Double Colorless, but, I mean, that doesn't matter if the opponent can't hit you, right? This forces decks to play single price stuff as well, otherwise they're just going to lose to Quad Hooper deck. And Quad Hooper, I think with like 2 other cards, one of them being Circuitry, did actually see tournament success at this time. There are various other walls and stally cards, control type cards we'll get into, that also make that playable, as much as I don't want to say it. So yeah, Pepper's probably going to try it, because I think he did notice this and was a little bit interested. So we'll see at some point, I'm sure, this will come into play. I'm going to switch this on because it has lyrics. I'm sorry. Anyway, Shiny Rayquaza is the only dragon type in this set, and I mean, there's a deck you can play around it. I'm probably going to try and build it if I can get the inspiration for it. 120 HP, free energy retreat cost, heavy ball searchable, pretty good because the Magna Zone that you play with it is also heavy ball searchable, so that's kind of neat. Drag Pulse does the same as what it did for Ray all the way back in Drag's Exalted actually. 1 lightning, 40 damage, discard the top 2 of your deck. A little bit less aggressive now than it used to be, because 40 HP doesn't kill stuff like it used to. But that's okay, because we have Sky Judgment, which for a fire, 2 lightning, and a colorless does 190 damage. Ooh, that's a lot. You have to discard free energy from it though. But we have Fisherman, we have Energy Retrieval, we can Energy Recycler stuff if we want to, and Magna Zone can attach as many lightning energies you want per turn. So Professor's Letter's still in format, we could still search stuff out as well. I think there is a little bit there. There's 220 damage with a Choice Band on the table here. That's enough to KO basically anything that isn't a Stage 2 GX. So I think there's a little bit there. It's cool. And so I might try and build it. It's probably not as good as the rest of the stuff around here though, but hey, who knows, right? Shiny Arceus is almost there, but it takes 4 colorless energy to do Ultimate Arrow, which is just too much. It does do 30 to each of the opponent's Pokemon, so it's like 10 more than Tapu Koko, and I mean, I don't think you could make it cost less than that, to be fair. Triple colorless would probably be too cheap for this type of attack, but as it is, it just ends up not being playable over the Koko, because it's got a retreat cost, and despite having, you know, Fabled Defense as well, which whilst it's active prevents damage done to your bench. It's kind of neat. The problem is it takes twice as many attaches, twice as many energy as the Koko does, so as far as spread goes, really doesn't work very well. Also weak to fighting, which again does not help at this stage. For the trainer cards, we have Damage Mover, which did see experimentation at the very least in a much far distant format here. Move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to another one. There's a couple of funky things this could do right now. This could let you move some damage from your previously attacked active to an undamaged bench Pokemon, so you could Ace Roller it up, say a Tapu Lele or something, just get it out of harm's way. Or later on, there's a Spiritomb that lets you do damage based on how many damage counters the Spiritomb has on it, which is, I think, where this actually saw some experimentation. So that's neat, I suppose. We'll see it then. There's a Pokemon Breeder that like draws 2 and heals 20 when you're active. That's not particularly good, but the artwork is very cute, so there is that. Sophocles is new to this set. You discard 2 cards from your hand. I think it's new in this set. No, Sophocles might have been in the last set. Discard 2 from your hand, draw 4. It might have been the last one, I don't know. I know the other trainers in here are not new, so yeah, I don't remember for this one, to be honest. And then finally, we have Warp Energy reprinted here as well. So if you attach it to the active, then you get to switch it with the bench. You have to switch it with the bench. So I don't remember this ever actually seeing play outside of maybe like a Whimsicott deck or something later on. But yeah, it's in the format, so we'll talk about it anyway. On to Crimson Invasion, and this one might go slightly quicker because there's like 20 something cards I think that are at least interesting in here if we're being generous. There's a Kakuna that has Multiply, so you can basically water duplicates, or grass duplicates I guess in this point. Search your deck for free Kakuna, put them onto the bench. This would be useful for the Beedrill from Evolutions, which snipes damage based on the number of Beedrill you have in play. But it's still very vulnerable then to just getting killed immediately, and I guess you've got to play like a ton of red candy there. The problem is, like, that deck doesn't have splash energy because it's not a water deck. So unlike Greninja, the tools are just not there for it, and also Beedrill takes 2 energy, so you can't just, you know, bring it active immediately. It's too clunky. So yeah, the Beedrill in this set, if you evolve into it, does like 10 plus paralysis and poison. Doesn't even do the 60 for that. It's just like, I think there's a future version of this that does more damage when it's evolved like this way, or maybe if it was from bench to active, I don't remember. But point is, this one's really bad, so yeah. On the fire side, there's a very funny Alola Marowak that for 0 energy lets you attach a fire from your discard to your Pokemon per energy the opponent has in play. So that's kind of fun. You just get to attach a ton if they've like Kiawe or something turn 1. Doesn't really do anything beyond that though, so yeah, not super good. There's a Starmie that lets you just shuffle it into the deck. Why you would do that, I don't know. We've lost Dive Ball and Level Ball as well, so it's like really hard to search out at this point. But at least it looks cute. Yukamori's clay stuff going in hard once again. There's a Magikarp that lets it prevent bench damage done to itself whilst it's on the bench. That's really cool, but we just lost a Gyarados that works with it, so it doesn't really do anything anymore, so that's a shame. There's a Gyarados EX in here that's got a ton of HP, but its attacks are too expensive, just like Gyarados normally is, and yeah, really doesn't do anything good. Looks kinda neat though, 240 HP, but it evolves from this thing, so good luck. I quite like the artillery with the counter energy at the end of the set. We will get there, I promise. For the counter energy, its special artillery does 40 damage, you know, water and colorless. You can discard the special energy from it though to do 120. So if you're playing the other artillery anyway for the draw part, and you are playing like a single prize counter punchy sort of deck, which I believe there are a couple that you could do that with, this does 120 and could kill water weak stuff with like GXs and stuff. It's kind of cool, so I like it. There's Regice in here that doesn't take damage from stage 2s if you have Regirock in play. Woo, I suppose. It really isn't very good, but I think it's needed for the Regigigas to actually attack later, so there you go. Alolan Raichu is somewhat okay. It's a little bit too expensive because it can't be counter energy thingied here, but it doesn't have a retreat cost if there's a stadium in play. Woo. And Psychic does 70 plus 20 for each energy on the opponent's active, but it takes 3 energy to do that. You can play it anywhere, that's the like plus side for it, and there is triple acceleration energy later on, which is basically boost energy that we could maybe use this with, but I think it's too expensive. Just like Golem EX, along with Golem's main thing is Heavy Rock GX, 2 lightning, 2 colorless, 100 damage, the opponent can't play cards in their hand next turn. Very annoying move, but doesn't really do a whole lot, takes a ton of energy, and is on a stage 2, which is weak to fighting, so it's never going to work. There's a Gengar that lets you put damage counters on the opponent's Pokemon when they attach energy to that Pokemon. Doesn't really do anything else though, unfortunately, but the artwork is cool. Just like when the Misdreavus over here, this might be one of my favourite Misdreavus artworks actually. It just looks amazing, to be honest, right next to the altar as well. Mismagius revives Chaos Wheel, so the opponent can't play Tools, Special Energy, or Stadium cards in their hand next turn, just like the Giratina. It only takes 1 energy this time as well, so whoa, but the problem is it only does 30 damage. And I mean, the opponent could just be only playing special energy, at which point they're kind of screwed. Pokemon Ranger doesn't really see any play at this point, so there's no way they get around that. But that's not gonna happen most of the time, so yeah, pretty bad card overall. Chimecho is sort of worth noting here. Bell of Silence prevents the opponent from playing any Pokemon that has an ability from their hand next turn. Also does 10 damage, costs a Psychic Energy. This prevents you playing Lele or evolving into stuff that has an ability as well, because that is playing a Pokemon. So you can't play your Decidueyes, you can't play your Zoroark, stuff like that. Decent, like, stun card, I suppose. Pretty funny. Speaking of funny cards, Gourgeist, I wish Eco Arm was still available for this. For a double colors energy, 120 HP, does Pumpkin Bomb, 10 damage, plus 40 for each tool that you discard from your Pokemon in play. So maxes out at 210, which would be 240 if it had a choice band that was discarded. That is kind of neat. It actually maxes out, because it's on anything, technically maxes out at 250, because it can discard 6 tools in one turn. There are Rotom forms that come out in the next set, and one in the set after, that can attack for no energy if you have like 9 tools in the discard. So this could work as an alternate attacker there as well. Problem is, it's just like very expensive to do, so I don't know, it's very hard to like do that more than once really. There's not a lot of good tools to play at the moment, so yeah. There's a Psychic Salandit here. This is notable because of Mysterious Treasure later. This will be more searchable than the Fire one, even though the Fire one coming out will have 70 HP. Sometimes you would see this just because of that. The Salazzle in here isn't super great. I mean, Nasty Plot is kind of cool, but you're just going to get End, really. So, not the greatest, and I mean, I guess it's less likely now, but you also just play Sylveon if you want this kind of thing. Just being a stage single prizer doesn't justify having 90 less HP and 1 less card to search, so yeah. Nihilego, I did sort of bring this one up earlier to show the GX attack. It's 180 HP, and when you bench it from the hand, you leave both active Pokemon confused and poisoned. Confusion and Poison, funnily enough, are the exact 2 status conditions that Chaos Stadium? I don't remember what the thing was called. It's the one that prevents status conditions on like 2-sided thing. Confusion Poison is actually the exact combination that doesn't get hit there. So this could be a way with Alolan Muck potentially that you could get special conditions down without having to play Salazzle down every single turn. So that's cool. Lockup is too expensive, so we're not really going to talk about that too much. There is a Stuffle that is a fighting type here, which is noteworthy because if you want to play Beware, there's one that draws cards when you evolve into it, so, I mean, you could. And if you want to play Beware, this one is searchable by Brooklet Hill. So it's notable for that alone, really. Unfortunately, the fighting type Beware is not amazing, but fighting type evolution, you know, her Zoroark-GX, I suppose, does one-shot that, so that's kind of neat. 120 for fighting double colorless. If it was fighting colorless, I think I'd be cool with it, but bit too expensive, unfortunately. Does take less damage from attacks though, so it's functionally, outside of fire Pokemon, has got 160 HP, so that's pretty cool. Heavy Ball searchable too, so it's at least a tiny bit of coolness to it. And then we get to Buzzwole. 190 HP, only a 2 energy retreat, so you can't Heavy Ball search this, but that's fine because Brooklet Hill exists, so we'll get it with that. This is essentially Landorus EX 2.0. Jet Punch is the same as Hammerhead, 30 for 1 fighting, 30 to 1 of the opponent's bench, ridiculously aggressive early attack, and then Knuckle Impact for triple fighting energy does 160, but Buzzwole can't attack during the next turn, so you have to get it switched out as well. That doesn't matter, because you can Guzma with it, and then you can just bring it back in with and go from there. Yeah, Jet Punch gets ridiculous with Strong Energy still being in the format and Regirock still being in the format, so we can easily get that to hit 60, 80, 90, 100 damage potentially to a GX. That's kind of insane. And Knuckle Impact is just a ridiculous attack when you put the damage mods on it as well. Can KO a ton of stuff actually. If you get a couple of Strong Energy on this thing and a Choice Band, that KO's Gardevoir in 1 hit. which is gross. So yeah, I mentioned absorption before. It does a lot of damage early in the game and does not stop you from attacking next turn, so you are probably going to see it early on in the game, because obviously the more prizes you take, the weaker it gets. So yeah, ridiculous card though. There's not much else to say for it. The Hydreigon's got a funny ability. You can make it so that you parallel city yourself basically without being locked into only free Pokemon. Discard your bench down to free Pokemon basically. So that's cool, I suppose. It's also got a Kindle style attack, but it's not really good enough at the moment. We did lose a couple of rotations ago. We lost the acceleration Hydreigon, so not really good enough there. And then I'm pretty sure Sai is going to try and do something stupid with this because he was laughing about it before. Zoroark-GX is a 210 HP GX over here, so just in case the Celesteela wasn't big enough for you, have one that's 10 HP higher. Kinda silly. Its first attack for 1 Darkness Energy mills the top 5 of your own deck, but if there are any energy cards milled there, attach them to this Pokemon. Which it needs because for 3 dark and 2 colorless, Tyrannical Hole, what an attack name, right, does 180 damage. That is a lot of damage to be fair, so it's kind of neat, but 5 energy, a lot to go on there. Glutton GX takes 5 dark energy and only does 100 damage, but you take 2 more prize cards if you KO with it. This taking more prize cards on KO thing actually comes into play later with the single prize Guzzlord as well. So they keep it in theme. It's kind of neat. Yeah, it does a ton of damage obviously. 210 with a choice band is nothing to scoff at. And it has a lot of HP in its own right, but 5 energy is too much to reliably get, right? So the meme is that you play like 4 of this and 56 dark energy and that's your entire deck. But yeah, it's not really gonna sustain a game, to be honest, because once the first guy goes down, and he will go down, even if you manage to get a second one out, 5 energy, you're not gonna have 5 turns to get another one charged up, so it's just not good. But it's funny, and sometimes that matters more. Registeel actually did see quite a bit of play. Turbo Arm lets you attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your bench for 1 metal, doing 30 damage. Which, yeah, actually matters quite a bit. It doesn't tend to accelerate other types of energy because that metal in the cost is a little bit awkward. But yeah, it lets you attach more energy, which is really good. Also, Heavy Ball searchable, potentially. Iron Hand is, like, fine. If you've got Regice on the bench, you heal 30 with this as well. 2 metal on the colorless, doing 90 damage. It's okay. But yeah, it's just energy acceleration early on. And works out quite well. I should mention the Regirock actually here as well, because not that it was really played too often, but the Regirock makes your Registeel do 10 more damage to your opponent's active. So I guess if you benched a bunch of these, you could do quite a bit with the Registeel. And obviously this accelerates basic energy, because the goal is to play it in a Regi-focused deck here, culminating in the Regigigas that we'll see in just a little bit. There's a couple of cards to speak on first, including Kartana. 170 HP, Kartana is very frail, at least on the special side, but there's not a lot of HP on Kartana to begin with, so yeah, lower HP GX here. Its attack is okay, metal double colors to do 70, and you can shuffle it into the deck. That does come up sometimes, and yeah, it doesn't even KO Gardevoir with a Choice Belt though, so it's kind of sad, but that's okay. Slice Off is the main thing you see this used for. When you bench it, you discard a special energy from one of the opponent's Pokemon. Doesn't have to be their active, so that's kind of neat. And then Blade GX for 1 metal takes a prize card. So yeah, if you ever get down to a single prize left, this for a single metal or rainbow energy or something like that wins you the game. Kind of neat. There's a Xerneas over here to go with the Yveltal, I guess, from the previous set. It's not very good though. Like, Search for a Supporter is fine, but you've got Lele, so just play Lele, right? And Bright Horns is too expensive. If it was Fairy double colorless, I'd get behind this, but 130, can't use Bright Horns next turn. It's just not good enough nowadays, unfortunately. There's a single prizer, but there's a better Xerneas that we could play for that. There's a Alolan Executor GX in here as well. I don't particularly like this guy, but it does have some funny attack names, so there is that. For 1 Grass Energy, you snipe 20 per Grass Energy attached to this Pokemon to one of the opponents. So I guess you could play this with that Venusaur, double its attachment stuff, and go from there. It is a massive 220 HP guy, so even though Execute is pretty frail, this is a lot of HP for a single Pokemon, so that's neat. Dragon Hammer does 120 for a Grass and triple colorless. Blech. It does leave the opponent's active confused. I guess that's somewhat cool. And then Tower Go Round GX for the same attack cost does 180, and then you shift your energy around your board in any way that you like. But it is only a once per game attack, and it's not great for that, so kind of whatever. I remember seeing the Miltank at some point here. I kind of like this thing. For the 100 HP thing, its attack is not very good, but its Moo Moo Molt is what it was used for. As long as it's active, if you attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, you heal 90 from it. So I think there was a Stall type deck that used this. I don't remember what it was. I guess you could probably tech it into like a Magnezone deck or something and be able to heal like a ton of damage away. But yeah, it's like with Floatstone or Silvally that we'll talk about shortly, you could make it retreat for nothing, and so you could just promote it after a KO and heal something else off the bench. It's kind of cool. So yeah, print a good start up to card challenge. Level Impossible continues over here. I just like the artwork, so I want to bring it up. And then we get to Regigigas, one of the Stall staples. This set actually does, if it does anything, it introduces Stall into the format, and that's really annoying. 180 HP single prizer. That's basically all you need to know about it. It doesn't really do anything else. But if you do want to play the dedicated Reggie meme deck, which DNA did give me a list for, it can't attack unless you have all the Reggies on the bench. You could just disable this ability with Garbodor or Muck though, so that's pretty funny. Then for 5 colorless energy, Giant Stomp does 160, and you discard a stadium that's in play. That's like fine. If you put a Choice Band on it, 190 actually does one-shot a lot of basic GXs, so kind of cool, but that's pretty much all it does. And realistically, all it is for being a 180 HP single prizer as a basic Pokemon, right? So like Wailord is technically bigger, but Wailord's is a stage 1. This just gets put down as a basic, and the decks that played it didn't have any energy cards, so there you go. It does have a really cool alt art though, which I did put as my preferred one here. There's a very funny attack name on Cinccino, and very funny effect for it too. Amazing Plea is just great. You choose 2 cards in your discard pile, ask your opponent if you can put them into the hand. Obviously they're going to say no, at which point it's 80 damage to the opponent's active for a single energy. Which is kind of cool, not going to lie, but like, nah, it's just not happening. Type Null is worth noting because it has 110 HP, which is like the biggest evolving basic in the game, I'm pretty sure. So, except for Chansey, right? Because Chansey's like 120, and maybe Wailmer? Is Wailmer 120 at this point? I don't even remember. But it is like the biggest relevant one, so like that actually keeps it safe from stuff like Jet Punch, which is something that you cannot say for a Zoroark. So pretty cool. It evolves into Silvally, obviously, which is a 210 HP stage 1. Not too bad. Its gyro unit lets it make your basic Pokemon not have a retreat cost. So doesn't include itself, obviously, but it means that if you get one of these on the bench, every single like part of your section becomes like more mobile. So it's really cool. For triple colorless energy, it can do 2 different attacks. Turbo Drive lets you do 120 damage and attaches a basic energy from the discard to one of your bench. So this is how you get set up with stuff like Celesteela in the end, is that you can Turbo Drive with this, or Turbo Arm with Registeel, get some power-ups going that way. Or Rebel GX copies Dangerous Rogue, and for the triple colorless energy, does 50 for each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. So if the opponent overbenches against this deck, you will just get a one-shot on their big 2 prizer that they're working with. So yeah, Silvally has a gimmick. It is the Arceus system, obviously, and it lets it use tool cards to change its type. We get these trickled out over the next few sets, and we start with Fighting and Psychic, because those are the two most relevant types in the meta right now. Fighting for hitting Zoroark, Psychic for hitting Buzzwole. So, really, really good. I wish the Grass one came out at the start too, though, because Lycanroc is the third thing that I would really love to hit here. But Grass doesn't come out until later on. It's like Lightning and Fire is the next one, and then I think Grass and Water, so it doesn't come out until way too late for me. Oh well. Let's talk about the few stadiums and stuff we have here. Countercatcher is... it's not even... yeah, trainer cards. Blah. Countercatcher is neat. If you are behind on prizes, you gust up the opponent. This is actually getting a reprint in Paradox Rift as well, coming up. That's pretty fantastic, to be honest. It's a really cool card. The only thing I have an issue with is in the current format we're going into, this is a control tool. And I really don't like that, right? It's a stalling option because the stall decks are always going to go behind on prizes, they don't take prizes, and it gets pretty gross. But in normal games, this is really, really cool, and a fantastic way of playing like single prize decks. Love it. So, yeah, you know, obviously going to hate going against it in stall decks, but love the rest of it. It's pretty cool. Dashing Pouch is a very, very, very bad floatstone. But if you're playing exactly Magnezone, maybe you could justify it just the tiniest little bit. If the Pokemon this is attached to discards energy for its retreat cost, put that energy back into the hand. That's kind of cool. So it means that if you have an energy like a Deluge type effect, that's why I mentioned Magnezone, you could realistically reattach that energy where you need it to be, and sometimes when you put a floatstone on something that's got like 2 or 3 energy on it, you wish you could pay the retreat cost because you need that energy on your attacker. So that's the only way that I'd see it being useful, but honestly, not good enough, just kinda cool to note. Devoured Field is pretty solid after we give up Reverse Valley, because it makes your Dark and Dragon Pokemon do 10 more damage. Dragon Pokemon getting damage is something, you know, this would still work for, but right now, Reverse Valley does this as a one-sided effect for Dark Pokemon. It does make Metal Pokemon take 10 less damage, so maybe that's a disadvantage, but not giving the opponent Zoroark plus 10 damage as well. I think this is probably still a little bit outclassed right now, but keep an eye on it, we might see it eventually. Gladion is one of our 2 supporter cards here. You look at your face down prizes, put 1 into the hand, shuffle the Gladion into your prizes. There is a clause just in case you use Pokemon's attack effect for using this supporter, where if it wasn't played and it was just like copied by something else, it doesn't do anything. So keep that in mind. You can't say, imagine if Smeargle was still in format, you could portrait and you copied this, it wouldn't do anything. That's the idea. Lusamine is the more dangerous of these 2 supporters though. While Gladion is pretty cool for being able to fish something specific out of your prizes, Lusamine is troublesome. Put 2 in any combination of supporter and stadium cards from your discard pile into your hand. There's a missing line of text there, or a missing parentheses clarification. There is no except Lusamine on this card, so you can loop this thing indefinitely and get your Disruption supporters back, and that is one of the main reasons why Stall is actually so viable here, because we've got like Team Flare Grunt and Plumeria for discarding energy off the board, we've got Team Skull Grunt for discarding energy out of the hand, we've got Delinquent, or which this actually works well with too because of the stadium part. We've got like Delinquent, we can rip the hand away, Team Skull Grunt can get energy out of their hand, and Team Rocket's Handiwork can start milling cards out of their deck when they just don't have like an attack going at any point. So it's gross, basically, and unfortunately that is the majority of what it ends up being used for, rather than actually being used for recovering, say, like a big stadium or something back after it gets field blowed. So yeah, not a huge fan of it, to be honest. Peeking red card is not as bad as the original red card. The opponent does show their hand, that's the peeking part of it, and then you get to choose whether or not they shuffle their hand back into the deck. So it's a little bit like Looker's Investigation, where that card looked at the opponent's hand and then one player shuffle drew 5. This card lets you look at their hand, and then if you want to, you can force them to shuffle draw as many cards as they had in said hand. So if you see that their next turn is going to be insane, then you can make them reshuffle their hand in, and possibly dead draw as a result. Not a great gambit, to be honest, but I mean, it's something. And then, speaking of something, this is the opposite of that. Sea of Nothingness, I really like the backdrop of this. It's in Nihiligo's Ultra Space, which is pretty cool, but it's not very good. Special conditions are not removed when Pokemon evolve or devolve. I wish this was like effects of attacks or something as well, right? You know, because you can still say if the opponent can't attack next turn because of, I don't know, let's just give an example, Cobalion's Ironbreaker from all the way back in Noble Victories or whatever, that puts an effect on the opponent where they can't attack, but if they evolve, that effect goes away. I wish this just also included stuff like that. Not that it would make it playable, but it would still be a lot better, right? Because it's like, oh no, now I evolve into Gardevoir and I can attack again. It's just really weird. And then finally, what I've been touting for quite a while in this thing, we've eventually gotten to it. Counter Energy provides a colorless energy to any Pokemon, but if it is on a single prizer, it's non-GX, non-EX, and you are behind on prizes, it is a double rainbow energy. And that is exceptional for a ton of decks in the format here. So right now, it's maybe not like the best it could be, but as we move on, with more spread tools being in single prize stuff and more decks playing like double colorless energy turbo, think Persimmon that was like, I think it was played before, but if it wasn't, like Persimmon attacks for a double colorless energy, you're limited by how many double colorless you have in play. Counter energy can be double colorless number 5 through 8, and it's kind of insane. And also lets you play these like single prize Pokemon that take 2 energy, even if they are colored as well. I believe Cobalion from Steam Siege actually ends up seeing some play with this as well, because Revenge Blast actually works very well alongside it too. But its attack cost of 2 metal was a bit prohibitive. Until now. So yeah. That's pretty much it. We have a full art of Olivia in this set too, but that was from the previous set, just she didn't have a full art in that one for some reason. But now she does, so I guess you could search your GX Pokemon in peace. Woo. I mean, it searches for 2 Zoroark, I suppose that's not the worst thing in the world, but we have better ways of doing that. These sets are pretty cool overall. I mean, Crimson Invasion's a bit of a damp squid, but Shining Legends is really cool, and there are at least a few decent cards in here, so hopefully we will see some fun stuff here. I don't know exactly how many practice sessions we're going to do on this one, because we are going to be like -1 on those, so I don't know if we're just going to do like 2 so we can get used to not playing with VS Seeker and stuff like that, or what. We should do at least 2 actual parts in this though, because there's a lot of decks to look at. I haven't even like built everything yet, but just to show, we are like including the Shining Legend stuff, because this was initially the goal. I already have like 11 decks, and I'm considering building 3 or 4 more, because there are other archetypes I've been spotting that I want to build. Just gotta find reference points or build them from scratch if they're not like tournament winning ones. So yeah, lots and lots of stuff to look at basically. So if you've managed to stick through to the end of this, thank you very much. This is by far the longest one of these I've done, but it's covering 2 big sets, so you know it's gonna happen. If you have enjoyed this, then I will hopefully see you for the next one, where we actually do some battle stuff with this. So until then, take care.